Welcome back to Direct Station, where politics and planets collide and converge. I'm Kate Carey. For those just tuning in for the first time, what we're doing here is tracking the planetary and earthbound events happening all around us each day. My goal is to invite you into a conversation about the possibility that these extraordinary events in human history are related to and illuminated by cosmic patterns that have repeated throughout time. I know it's a lot. If you believe the moon affects the tides, though, there's a possibility that you're open to gaining some comfort through visibility into some planetary explanations for what we're experiencing here on Earth. It all has a context to it. What we're living through has a context. It's not as random or even as preventable as we may have wanted to believe. Today, I want to focus on something that explains a lot of the intensity you've been feeling. Astrologers have been talking about 2025 and 2026 for a long time. In particular, March of 2025 was sort of the first big hurdle. When I read or listen to the wise ones who have been at this for decades, they are all speaking of the wondering and the anticipating that they've been doing for so much of their careers while looking ahead to the time that we're in right now. They knew it would be big. They didn't know how. But they knew a lot was going to change. And for the most part, the consensus is that it's heading somewhere better and beautiful and important, but whew, it's a lot to navigate. Right? I mean, anyone who's an adult right now has lived through plenty already. But this is more than we understood could happen in one period of time. In so many places, about so many things, all at once. Okay, so we are currently in the peak of what is called eclipse season. The most important new thing to understand about eclipses is that twice a year you get an eclipse duo. Remember last year, the total eclipse of the sun, which, by the way, was one of the most powerful collective experiences I have ever had. I was in Central Park that day, walking across, not realizing everyone would gather, which is sort of naive in retrospect. But they did, by the tens of thousands. And man, everybody was so quiet, so still, so curious, so amazed, so touched. And then everybody got up to go when it was over. And it was like this, the total opposite of what it's like when a concert gets out, you know? People were also peaceful and kind to each other and making eye contact with each other, something New Yorkers don't often do. Honestly, the last time I saw a sidewalk full of people doing that was after 9/11. But this time there was no grief, just honestly, wonder. Okay, so that eclipse, we all interacted with it or heard about it in some way, right? That had another eclipse with it, an eclipse buddy, a few weeks apart. Some eclipse duos are more intense than others. The two that we are between right now are far more intense than most. You'll hear me saying something like that a lot. It's because we're in a really wild time that is more or less unprecedented. A word we're also getting tired of, right? This is true for a few reasons that I'll explain. But for now, trust me that we're living through a doozy of a situation. And we are currently in the creamy filling portion of this Oreo cookie life. The first one was this past Thursday and into Friday, the 14th of March. And the second one is at the end of the month on the 29th. So we're right in the middle. We are literally between shadows right now. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling it intensely in my body, in my relationships, in the lives of the people I love, at work, in the news cycle, everywhere, right? You too? If you've been experiencing unusual intensity, disruption, sudden revelations, or emotional overwhelm, you are so not alone and so not imagining it. Eclipse seasons are cosmic accelerators, and this one is particularly potent and so not imagining it. Eclipse seasons are cosmic accelerators, and this one is particularly potent. Let me break down what's happening in the sky right now and why it matters. And then I'll get into some concrete ways to see it in your own life and in the world. So just briefly, consider this a little mini lesson. I'm an educator by trade, so bear with me for just a moment while I try to explain some sort of the big picture here. So eclipses occur when the sun, moon, and earth align in such a way that either the moon blocks the sun, which is a solar eclipse, or the Earth's shadow falls on the moon, that's a lunar eclipse. So I'm about to make a claim about what happens in the world when eclipses happen in the sky. And please, for today, just trust when I'm making an assertion about what seems to be true regarding events or locations or moving objects is because astrologers since the beginning of time have been watching and using what they see to make meaning or plan ahead in their world. In the absence of the predictive technology you and I enjoy or are burdened by, they needed to choose variables that they had. And so they used the large things, obviously moving, predictably, often, it turned out, in the sky. Have you ever had a period of your life where you're outdoors a lot, staring at the sky a lot? It becomes familiar, right? Your particular chunk of the sky. And when new things come in, you notice. You notice the correlating events, maybe even. So since the ancients began organizing around these events and around these eclipses, astrologers have been noticing that these alignments act as a cosmic spotlight. Importantly, illuminating what's been hidden and accelerating developments that might otherwise have taken months or years. I want to say that again. What astrologers have come to notice over hundreds and hundreds of years is that eclipses illuminate what's been hidden and accelerate what might otherwise take a much longer time. Does that resonate with you when you think about what you and we are living through right now? Right? So when the eclipses would happen, the ancients would go, oh shit, what is about to go down? So which part of the sky the eclipse is in matters in the sense that the particular skyland has stuff that comes up, themes that get affected. So this one is in Virgo. We've been talking about Virgo because there's other important stuff happening in that section of the sky right now. Just remember all the signs like Virgo or Cancer or Sagittarius, first and foremost represent parts of the sky. If you looked up and there was a circle on the sky divided into sections, each section would have a sign name on it, like Virgo or Cancer or Sagittarius. Pick your sign. They all have a spot in the sky. And so a lot of how we've come to understand these correlations are dependent on this sectioning business. So the eclipse that just happened on the 14th was in the Virgo section. So if eclipses are illuminating what's hidden and revealing new information or accelerating developments, that was all happening in the Virgo territory. So what are the Virgo themes? Virgo themes include systems, analysis, details, service, civil service, right? So what was revealed? What was ended? What showed signs of ending? Being in Virgo, it particularly highlighted breakdowns in systems a lot of us are pretty attached to. Healthcare systems, public service, organizational structures that were wildly imperfect, and the absence of which will be incredibly problematic for a lot of people. But this was no accident. The eclipses in Virgo fell very, very close to the south node. Eclipses are always near one of the two nodes, and this one was by the south node. We've talked a little bit about the south node, and the easiest way to explain it simply here is that it's about what we're ending, what we're discharging. It's the tail of the dragon, the end of the animal, what we're clearing out to make way for the new things that will come. So having an eclipse right by that point, it's a point in the sky. It accelerated a time in which we are collectively releasing, we are collectively coming apart around those systems. This process has only intensified now. I'm sure you're experiencing it in your world. It hasn't peaked yet. I'm sure you sense that too. Remember, we are still on a little train cranking to the top of the roller coaster. On March 29th, we will experience a solar eclipse in Aries. Remember, a solar eclipse is when the moon is between us and the sun, and we can see it partially or completely cover a portion of the sun, depending on where we're standing on the earth. This new moon eclipse, in which the moon is a big black circle in the sky, is correlated with initiating new beginnings related to Aries themes. Do you know any Aries people? Aries are often courageous people, people who cause things, people who have a courage, people who take direct action. So that's what this eclipse will end up being about: our identity, our initiative, our courage, and our direct action. And the North Node will be right there with it, opposite the South Node in Virgo. The North Node is destiny, the future, where we're going. And it's particularly significant because it's the first eclipse in Aries since the nodes changed neighborhoods. When nodes move towns, it's a big deal. And the first eclipse after they've moved is often pretty mighty. And this is the first one after this nodal shift. This creates a powerful crossroads energy, with the eclipse activating both our evolutionary path forward and the emerging Aries action-oriented energy that might come. So the other themes that are coming up because of other bodies nearby or at mathematically precise angles that have significance. Remember, astrology is super mathy. So these angles and these placements, a variety of things are making all this ending and beginning have themes that include stuff that's making us reassess what we value and who we love. Have any of you heard from old loves in the last few weeks or reached out to any? Have any of you found that something you used to find value in no longer has so much value to you? Even if you haven't confessed it to others who might care, has that happened quietly inside you? Technology and its meaning and its proponents and how it interacts with our lives is peaking, like it did with the cotton gin or the steam engine or the printing press. There's this goo, though. There's this pea soup, this dreamy haziness to everything. It's messy and it's unsure so far. Notice how intensely the whole collective is beginning to really, really, really pay attention to what's unfolding, but it's still so, I don't know, like we're trying to assemble an army in Jell-O, right? So that's one of the angles that's affecting. There's a planet kind of causing that. Another thing that's happening along with these eclipses is that emotional security and homeland security concerns are heightened. Heightened as all get out, right? Will we be okay when this is over? Will we be physically safe when this is over? So there's all these things happening in the sky affecting with their angles these eclipses that are making them more powerful, more potent than they might be. It's a perfect storm of cosmic energy, all converging in this 2-week window between eclipses. This 2-week window that we're in right now. That's why it feels so bananas. And if we look to the past for answers, we do see very consistent changes in the public sphere between eclipses in Virgo and the counterpart, which is near or close to Aries. We do see pretty profound beginnings and endings in leadership, in policy, and who's in and who's out with this coupling that we've got. While there's no absolute astrological rule connecting eclipses in these particular parts of the sky, we do see some noteworthy patterns of kings, dukes, as in Ferdinand, popes, as in John Paul, leaders generally passing or transitioning, major changing occurring within kingdoms, territories, boundaries, rulers. This perfect storm has a bunch of patterns intersecting, affecting all these themes that I'm naming. One of the cycles hasn't happened for 250 years, y'all. One hasn't happened for 29 years. One hasn't happened for 165 years. One for 8 years. And they don't ever all happen at the same time. And they're happening at the same time during eclipses. And. Get it? So, my dear friend, the way you're experiencing your life and the goings-on at the collective level is some of the most intense stuff humans have lived through, period. Let's be gentle with ourselves, yeah? So there's all this other stuff affecting how and where these eclipses are hitting. But for a quick moment, let's just look at what's happened the last few times this Virgo Aries eclipse season happened. The last time we had eclipses moving between Virgo and Aries was in 2015 and 2016. That period saw significant political polarization. Brexit happened then. The lead up to the 2016 election happened then. On a collective level, it represented a major turning point in how information was shared and processed, right? If you think about it, that is when the rise and really the threat and the power of the impact of misinformation really kind of took hold of a bunch of societies. We saw both heightened visibility for LGBTQIA rights, as well as significant backlash against those rights. We saw Black Lives Matter gaining momentum during that eclipse cycle, revealing both progress and entrenched resistance, showing the very long road ahead. The pattern suggests that eclipse seasons on this axis tend to both expose systemic oppression and catalyze resistance movements. Does that feel like an appropriate match for where we might be heading? The time before that, a similar pattern occurred in 97 and 98, coinciding with the Asian financial crisis and major shifts in global economic systems. There was also significant technological disruption as the internet began transforming society during that period of time. The time before that was in 79 and 80. Another Virgo Aries eclipse series accompanied the energy crisis then. Major economic restructuring. You're starting to see a theme there. And significant geopolitical change. The pattern is clear. When eclipses activate the Virgo Aries axis, we tend to see systems breaking down. That's the Virgo part. Bold, sometimes impulsive, new directions emerging. That's the Aries part. Health crises, highlighting systemic weakness. Financial crises, highlighting vulnerabilities or misdeeds. Individualistic responses to collective problems. The intensity of this eclipse season is manifesting in countless ways. I'm seeing some examples around me. In my own life, I've noticed conversations suddenly cutting to the core truths that might normally take months to surface, right? Like, bam, suddenly, oh, we're having that conversation today. Okay. I was thinking it was going to build for a while, but no, it's today. Okay. Right. Long-standing situations have reached breaking points. Physical symptoms have intensified, especially around the actual eclipse dates. Looking at the news cycle, we can see this eclipse energy everywhere. The sudden arrest of a permanent legal resident for speech, despite First Amendment protections. The number of tourists coming into the country for pleasure being restrained and incarcerated for days at a time, in a few cases in solitary confinement. Chuck Schumer abruptly conceding on the continuing resolution package without putting up any resistance whatsoever, and creating quite a kerfluffle within his party. The stock market plummeting in response to tariffs, despite predictable economic consequences that were forewarned. Previously, they're being implemented overnight, including this week, the gutting of the Department of fucking Education, which functions largely as a civil rights protection agency for young people. In my conversations with family and clients, I'm hearing about unexpected job changes or losses, hearing about sudden health situations requiring immediate attention. I'm hearing about relationships reaching breaking points. I'm hearing about long-buried truths suddenly emerging. I'm hearing about dramatic shifts in living situations. The common thread here is acceleration and illumination. Things that might normally evolve gradually are instead happening at warp speed. The Virgo eclipse illuminated what's broken, and the approaching Aries eclipse is about to ignite new responses to these revelations. But friends, here's what you need to know. We haven't reached peak intensity yet. The March 29th solar eclipse in Aries represents an ignition point, and its effects will continue to unfold throughout April, right? And that ignition point is not one moment, right? It's sort of a peak that will rise and then falling throughout April. The 2 weeks after the solar eclipse, I should say, tend to unfold like a story being written in real time. Events initiated suddenly near the eclipse date often develop significant momentum or follow through during that sort of lunar cycle, that month or so after the eclipse. Historically, major policy announcements, political developments, and social movements that began during Aries eclipses tend to have very serious, very real, very long-lasting. The revolutionary energy of Aries, combined with the igniting power of a solar eclipse, creates conditions where bold unpredictable actions are not just possible, but likely and pretty unavoidable. I'm telling you this not to alarm you at all, but to help you contextualize what you're experiencing and perhaps even what is rising inside you, right? To maybe give you some reason to believe that the tempo might really finally be about to shift. When we understand the astrological weather, we can navigate it more skillfully and more consciously and work with it, ride it, leverage it, use it, take advantage of the opportunity. So how do we navigate this intense eclipse portal? I do have some practical suggestions. First, recognize that eclipse energy affects everyone differently, depending on where it hits your birth chart. What I mean by that is where stuff was in the sky the day you were born sticks with you and kind of dictates your personality, your likes, your dislikes, your easy skills, or your challenging areas. We have free will, of course, but a bunch of sort of loose categories of what we've got to work with is very perceptible in the chart. So therefore, these placements affect you more or less if they're near, opposite, or at important angles with planets in your chart. So if it's kicking your ass and not your neighbor's ass, there's a reason for that. Second, eclipse seasons are poor times for forcing outcomes or making major decisions unless they involve letting go of what's clearly not working or leaning into what's clearly rising. If possible, wait until mid-April before committing to brand new things that weren't sort of already emotional, already rising within you. Third, pay attention to what's being illuminated. What is being revealed to you? Eclipses function like cosmic spotlights, revealing what was previously hidden. I didn't know that, and now I really know it. The revelations happening now, personally, collectively, contain important information about what needs to change, about what's going to change, whether we initiate it or not, about what we've been ignoring or didn't want to see. And then finally, take care of yourself. Take care of your physical well-being. Sleep, hydrate, sit, notice, eat real food that comes from the ground. Eclipse season often corresponds with heightened physical sensitivity and unusual energy levels, right? So we want to be sort of at our fighting best, if you will. Rest more than usual. Give yourself permission to process emotions as they come. This is no time, my friends, for compartmentalization. But like, this isn't really a time for numbing out either. It's a time for noticing gently what you're going through each day. So it's not a secret that you're hiding from yourself. And frankly, the energy of this season is that you won't really have that choice this time anyway. Finally, treat this as a period of accelerated evolution rather than crisis. Throughout history, eclipse season has corresponded with quantum leaps in consciousness and social development, even when they felt chaotic or dramatic in the moment. Change is scary, more for some than for others. That's your birth chart talking. But there's plenty that needs to change, right? Plenty that had reached its ripe date and then some, right? So despite the intensity, there's tremendous potential in this eclipse season. The Virgo-Aries combination specifically offers us the gift of practical action. Virgo shows us what needs fixing. Aries provides the courage to initiate change. That's so cool, right? This is why movements for justice often gain momentum during these alignments, during these particular eclipses. I'm already seeing signs of awakening and clarity emerging from this intensity. Aren't you? Come on, aren't you? AOC is considering challenging Chuck Schumer to, or lots of supporters believe that she ought to. Right? There's a lot of discourse now about new leadership for this time. That sort of bold response to the systemic failure that the Aries eclipse might catalyze. Communities organizing mutual aid in response to government service cuts. Unprecedented candor in public discourse about what's actually happening, from finance TV shows to TV shows about football to town halls to conversations at pickup, right? Aren't you talking to people you don't usually talk to about this stuff? The world is turning, and we're sort of talking about it in reality-based terms that no longer feel even partisan, but rather human, rather, where the hell we voted for? We didn't vote for this kind of discourse, right? Creative solutions emerging from necessity as old systems fail. We're coming up with it right now. We're coming up with what we'll do about it right now. You and me and everyone we know. Historically, similar eclipse patterns have led to both challenges and breakthroughs. The 97 Asian financial crisis ultimately led to stronger economic safeguards. The 2015-2016 polarization sparked unprecedented civic engagement. These cosmic crucibles don't just test us, they forge new possibilities in us and between us. And while the process can be disorienting, the clarity that emerges from the other side is often worth the journey. The only way out is through, right? As we navigate the days between these eclipses, I will leave you with portions of a poem from John O'Donohue that captures this moment of being between shadows. And it happens to be, relevantly and importantly, a meditation on citizenship. So at this time, while we reflect on our own country, on what it is shedding and what it is reaching for, what it might become, I share with you pieces of on citizenship. In these times, when anger is turned into anxiety, and someone has stolen the horizons and the mountains, our small emperors on parade never expect our indifference to disturb their nakedness. The industry of distraction makes us forget that we may have courage to turn aside from it all and come to kneel down before the poor to discover what we must do, how to turn anxiety back into anger, how to find our way home. Let's find our way home, y'all. Let's make this place home. It's a thing we keep talking about. Remember to document what's being illuminated in your life right now, the revelations, the breakdowns, the sudden clarity. This record will be valuable as you navigate what comes next. And documentation is resistance, my friends. Record what you know to be true. You are a primary source now. And do remember that throughout history, periods of greatest transformation have often felt most chaotic in the moment. Trust that the clarity emerging now, however painful as it is part of that. I'll talk to you in a few days. Hopefully not as many days as that eclipse caused in my life. Until then, may you find both clarity and courage as you navigate this time between the shadows. Do let me know if you'd like to have a chat about your birth chart and therefore your particular version of all this. And honestly, what your invitation is at this time, what your assignment is, what you might want to do with this chunk of your life, this lifetime of yours. Are you living into what's possible or even more probable for you? Until next time, my friends, be well, be conscious, be kind. I'll see you in a few days.